All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here recording episode 69, the nicest episode there is, and it's just the two of us today. Zach, we've Armin unfortunately is tied up with some basketball tryouts this week, so this is myself and Zach taking care of business this week. We're talking just a little bit about just quick questions. Gonna be a fun one today, not necessarily fantasy football related, but just talking shop about some football. Got lots to talk about, insiders and headliners, so we'll kind of crush through that. And then obviously progressing from week 11 into week 12. So before we get started, we'll say hello to Zach, and then we'll get things going. So Zach, what's been keeping you busy the last little week?
Well, just made supper for my wife and I, and just burnt my thumb on the thing in the oven. So if I get carted out here mid-episode by the ambulance, we know what's going on.
Yeah, I'll put you on the
This thing
day-to-day.
is, yeah, this thing is just like, I don't know, unlike any burn I've ever had from cooking.
I'm gonna put it on the not quite the injury reserve here, but we'll get you on the report, like game time decision.
Yeah,
Uh,
available, but limited participant.
yeah, exactly. The participant, that's what we'll call it exactly. And this past week was a fun one. We were talking a little bit about a little fantasy football last week, and obviously talking about the Huskies are in action, and a big W for the Huskies as they are going back to back presence in the national championship. So that's exciting for Husky fans and U of S fans. But we also talked a little bit about the Grey Cup, and it was a big one. One of my very good friends made his very first debut in the Grey Cup, so that was super exciting for him. And I wanted to go down and see it, but I refused to pay $700 because the tickets were astronomical. And the morning of, I was sitting there thinking, like it'd be kind of, or the morning before, sorry, the Saturday morning, that'd be kind of cool, but I don't want to pay that much. I ended up getting my hands on some pretty cheap tickets. So a group of four of us went down, and all I cared about was cheering for Sam. So that was pretty sweet to go watch my buddy in action in the biggest stage of obviously his officiating career. And then we did a little bit of Wellesley's wagers. It was Wellesley that came down with us, and we bet on Toronto, and Toronto won. And actually, it was a funny story about betting for Toronto. Um, our charity league group chat was going off about the game a little bit, and right after Winnipeg had that punt return, and the game seemingly was sealed for Winnipeg, and Toronto was in rough shape at that point. The betting odds were like plus 950 for Toronto to come back. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna put a lot of money on. Well, not a lot of money, but I'm gonna put some money down on that for a big return. So we were cheering for Toronto real big. And then when the last five plays, I think were touchdown, or was it field goal, touchdown, interception, block punt, or block field goal, block field goal. That was like the last five possessions. So it was exhilarating, but we were sweating that one out live. I don't know if I've ever made a bet and been there at live to watch the game happen, but it made the game real interesting. And I just didn't care about how cold I was in that moment anymore because I was jumping up and down, and we were having a grand old time. That was for sure. So that was a summation of my exciting, riveting week. And then the fact that basketball started for the elementary as well, too. So that's been a lot of fun. But getting things going here, the 22 fresh quick question of the week. Like I said, this is a bit of a different one. We're not talking necessarily fantasy football, but a little bit about just football in general, I guess. For those of you listening at home, if you're unaware, Zach is a Patriots fan, big time Pats fan. I'm a big Lions fan, and Armin is a big Vikings fan. Unfortunately, Armin's not here to answer this question, but I am actually a little bit curious on what the answer could be for this one. But the question is, if you could cheer for, if you could not cheer for your favorite NFL team, which team would you cheer for and why? And we'll let Zach start this one off here. Zach, so obviously a big Pats fan, not allowed to cheer for the Pats. Who are you cheering for in this one?
So when I saw this question, I looked at it and three teams immediately, actually four teams immediately came to mind. I thought Cincinnati Bengals right now, they have one of the most, if not the most exciting offenses when all the pieces are together. So thought that would be an easy one to cheer for. But then I also thought I always try to go to a Pats game. I always think about going to a Pats game, but travel's not great. So I thought, what are the teams closest to me? And I came up with the Seattle Seahawks, Minnesota Vikings, and the Buffalo Bills. Bills, very exciting offense, but won't be caught dead there in that garbage city. So scratch that one real quick. Then that was between the Vikings and the Seahawks. And Vikings, correct me if I'm wrong, they still play indoors. Can't support that. Scratch. So Seattle Seahawks, I'll be throwing a mackerel or whatever the hell they do in Seattle at that fish market. That's what I'm doing. Becoming a 12th man.
Just gonna say 12.
Geno Smith or bust.
Yeah,
Geno Smith or bust. Let's go.
You didn't write.
Also, it's like, I think it's like an 18-hour drive from Saskatoon, so not terrible. Actually, my wife and I, we were talking about going to the Pats Vikings game on Thursday. This Thursday, we were talking about driving down there, but between days that we've already taken off and days that we know we need to take off later this year, we don't have enough days to take off without paying for our subs. So regrettably, we won't get to see Kirk Cousins choke in prime time. So
that's too bad. That'd have been a lot of fun. They talk about playing indoors. I bet you Buffalo wishes they were playing indoors this last week. My goodness. But I've done that drive from Saskatoon to Seattle. We actually went from from Saskatoon to Portland, and then ended up going from Portland to Seattle a couple times to go see some baseball games. But done that drive before, Zach, so you can definitely do it. I don't know what it's like in the winter, but it might be a little difficult.
I hear it's like just like year round. It's supposed to be like pretty nice, presumably a heck of a lot nicer than Minnesota and New York. So
yeah, no kidding. Mine, I don't know. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I would cheer for the Rams. I've always, for some reason, liked the Rams even before the Matthew Stafford trade. And be plain and simple, the best way to describe it is I'm a Matthew Stafford fan. So I was obviously cheering for the Rams last year. I was cheering for them to win the Super Bowl. I was very happy they won the Super Bowl. But even back before, I think it had something to do with the fact, there was a lot of fantasy value there, and they were an exciting team to watch. And I really like Jared Goff. I still like Jared Goff. But that Jared Goff Cooper Cup combo in like 2017, 2018, whatever year that was single-handedly winning people fantasy championships. Like, it was, I remember that year, Zach, you had them in the staff league, and I played against you, and you didn't even pick up a defense because you were like, well, I'll play them on Thursday night and I won't drop anybody. And if they don't do bad, then whatever, I'll try and rock without a defense. And then if they do bad, whatever, I'll drop player and I'll pick up a defense, whatever. Thursday night, I think he got like 90 some points between the two of them. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm playing 11 versus 10 here, and I'm still probably going to lose.
yeah, that was the year of 2 Gurleys, 1 Cup. I had Todd Gurley and Cooper Cup in that lineup, and we were a bit of a buzzsaw, but that week, we were a buzzsaw on steroids. I was feeling myself there that Thursday night.
I remember like things got like pretty interesting. I think it was on the Sunday games. You're like, worst case, I'll pick up the Monday defense, and it wasn't like the best matchups, whatever. I was like, I don't think you're gonna need to do it, Zach. I was in bad shape that Thursday. Yeah, talk about a tilt. I was on tilt for the rest of the week. But that's, I guess, the Rams now for sure is because of Matthew Stafford. But I've always had that soft spot for the Rams, and even when Goff was not great, he was always a quarterback I kind of liked to target because he had that upside. And I liked Goff when he got drafted, and so I don't know. It's kind of tough to watch them lose right now, especially with Stafford a little bit banged up and obviously losing Cup. It's been difficult, but that would be my team. And also like Los Angeles. I've visited there a few times, so and then the logo itself is pretty sweet. I always liked the old throwback Rams helmets. I thought those were pretty sweet. So if you had to guess who do you actually you might even know. You might know the answer to this question, but do you know who Armin would say if you had to pick a second team?
Oh, geez, I couldn't even begin to guess.
I think he's going to say Cincinnati. I know he likes Joe Burrow quite a bit, but I also thought maybe Seattle just because of,
Yeah, you know what? I was actually going to say Seattle. That man loves Kenneth Walker like his third child, and loved Rashad Penny for some unknown reason, and had a soft spot for Chris Carson. So
he also loved Russell Wilson too. Like, he drafted him every year. So I mean, there's got to be
probably loved like Sean Alexander and like Nate Burleson back in the day too. So who the heck knows?
Yeah.
Put it down for 2 Seahawks fans.
Yeah, Seahawks. And then Burrow might be in that mix too. But he was talking about this big Jamar Chase trade he was making this past week. So there might be something there too. Who knows? But we'll get things going into a little bit of fantasy talk here, and we'll get into some insiders and headliners.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
So before we get into the actual insiders and headliners here, the breaking news of the episode is that we did put the poll up for the OBJ versus Justin Jefferson catch, and suck on it, Zach, 57-43 towards Justin Jefferson. And it was actually funny on the way up to the Grey Cup. We had a chat about this in the truck and what did guys think and which catch was which. And I said, we actually had a lot of votes on it. So it wasn't even like, 6 guys voted one and 4 of the other. So, it's not like that. But we had actually a really good turnout on this poll. And yeah, it's 57% Justin Jefferson, 43% OBJ. So it's not like this clear cut one was significantly better than the other. But yeah, a lot better than I'm holding the football here. And Justin Jefferson, please take the football as Zach has claimed the catch to be. So
I'll tell you what is clear cut. That 50% of you are wrong. That's what's clear cut.
I just had to throw that one at you. That's good stuff. But it was actually kind of neat to see a couple people even commented, I think this is the better catch. Why? Like, at the end of the day, they're two of probably the best 2 catches in the NFL. Like, I'm thinking like probably number 3 would be that Manningham. Is that the catch like when he had against his helmet? Like that would be.
Oh no, that was David Tyree in the 2007 Super Bowl against the Pats.
Yes. That
Manningham was like 11 on the sideline. Against the Pats.
You're right. I'm thinking the 2007 against the helmet. Like that one would be definitely in the mix. I think part of what goes into that too is like the moment. Like it's still an incredible catch, but it's in the Super Bowl. It's an important catch. Like those things go into play. That's an incredible catch.
Not to mention you had roided up Rodney Harrison yarding on your forearm, trying to rip that ball off of your helmet.
Yeah.
Like Rodney Harrison, built like a defensive end playing safety in the mid to late 2000s, was just a cheat code.
Yeah. So I think those, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I think those are probably the top 3 NFL catches of all time. I'm sure.
What about the, was it 16 or 17 with Edelman in the Super Bowl against the Falcons?
On the ground and it like rolled off. Like, yeah. Wasn't he the MVP?
Yeah, well, he had like something ignorant, like 14 receptions.
Yeah, that one's the mix, and there's got to be like a Calvin Johnson catch in there somewhere, and a Randy Moss that'd probably be in the mix too. But yeah, I think those 2 are the clear cut 2 best of all time. And I guess
just in this conversation alone, I have relived some of my highest highs and lowest lows.
I'll just keep throwing out the ones against the Pats. How about that?
Yeah.
We'll ride that roller coaster. Talk about riding the roller coaster. Waiver wires is going to be a fun one this week because not only are we coming down to the final stretch where teams need to win out or teams need to like at least get 2 of the next 3 to try and get in. And there's a good chance you've lost players throughout the year. And there's a good chance that you might have lost players again this week because there's a lot of injuries, some weird ones, some players that maybe were on the fringe of your roster, some players that you really wished weren't on your roster, but you just kept having to play them anyways, i.e. Kyle Pitts. But we'll go through some of these relatively quickly, and some of them we'll actually discuss a little bit. So this one happened this morning. Rams waived running back Darrell Henderson. So that one is, in a sense, I think they're going to try and see what they got in everybody else because of the situation they're in. I imagine he's going to get picked up by a team and going to probably create some sort of unfortunate committee for fantasy football, but that one time will tell. As of recording right now, we haven't heard anything, but that's something we'll have to continue to monitor. Another running back that was waived was running back Melvin Gordon from the Denver Broncos. So that committee now has lost 1 member. I imagine same thing as what I said about Darrell Henderson. He'll get picked up by somebody and probably make an unfortunate committee. But this was the news we wanted to hear for Javonte Williams about 6-7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever that would be now. Unfortunately, has come after the Javonte injury, but this will be interesting for Broncos moving forward next year. Justin Fields, so far, quarterback that we've been very high on this last couple of weeks, especially Armand with the rushing platform, and somebody he is very high on. Unfortunately, did get a little bit banged up in that game and is day-to-day with a left shoulder injury, so that's something you're going to have to monitor if you are the Fields owner. Talking about a couple other ones quickly here that you have to monitor. Rondale Moore left with a groin injury, something you have to monitor throughout these weeks of practice. Same as Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mike Williams. They left in that Sunday night, or both with ankle injuries. Mike Williams, somebody that you were hoping maybe waited a week extra just to make sure he was good to go, re-injured, or it was just too hard for him to go, hopefully. CEH, somebody that maybe you weren't really wanting to play or willing to play. Now it makes that backfield a little bit easier to predict, I'm going to say. Washington plays J.D. McKissick on IR with a neck injury. His season's over. Kyle Pitts, I talked about this one, that he tore his MCL. He's on IR. He's done for the year. That one, I think, you never want to wish injury on anybody, but for fantasy managers, I think that one's a blessing in disguise, because we talked about it. Like, you just didn't want to play Pitts, but you had to play Pitts, because what other tight end has the upside of putting up 3 touchdowns and 160 yards? No other tight end. But now, like, you can pick somebody up off the waiver wire and probably get more points than you've been getting from Pitts throughout the entire season. So this one, like I said, I don't want to wish injury on anybody, but for fantasy managers, it makes things a little bit easier moving forward. But question for you, I know Armin is very, very high on him in Dynasty. What's his Dynasty outlook now? Remember, people were wanting to spend the 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts on this guy because he's this generational talent. But we didn't see it year 1. Year 2 is as close to a bust as you could possibly get. Now a torn MCL. He's going to probably miss some time next year. What's his Dynasty outlook right now? Is this something you'd be willing to kick tires on? Maybe if you had to be in a rebuild, buy low, or is it something that's like, this, I've seen enough to be a little concerned?
I don't think we're going to view him anymore in that upper echelon with like the Kelseys, the Andrews, the Kittles, etc. I think he's now firmly, from what we've seen to this point, and now coming off a pretty substantial injury. He's still young. He still has a lot of potential, but you have to look at him now in that second tier, I think. Maybe somebody that you want to take a risk on or take a chance on and try to buy low. But
like, I don't know.
It's hard.
I need to see a change of quarterback or a change of coaching staff to have any sort of promise, because he's been in blocking more than he's been running routes, which is absurd. And
right.
They just, like I said, those are the 2 things I think they need to change, which maybe does create a buy low window, because I imagine people are frustrated. I owned him in redraft. I went against my better judgment, thinking I'm going on upside alone, and it burnt me, and it burnt me bad. And now Dynasty Manager, this is 2 years in a row that you've been burnt, and you're sitting there holding this guy that a lot of people would still probably want to try and buy, maybe thinking you can get out, and it might be a couple more years before you see any promise. And then even then, maybe the value goes down and down and down, and then you're holding absolutely nothing. So I think it is worth maybe trying to kick some tires on, but I'm not willing to pay the value I was willing to pay at the start of the season. That's 100% sure.
Yeah, in both of the, kind of the major dynasty leagues that I'm in, people would be throwing around like pretty big offers, like 2 firsts kind of thing, or maybe a first or 2 firsts and like a player, like a starter. So now, unless something drastic changes, I wouldn't even think about spending anywhere close to that. I might throw out some real insulting lowball offers and just see if they bite.
Like, but, so 2023 is supposed to be a very good dynasty rookie draft season. Would you be willing to give a 2023 first for him?
No.
Like, that's insane to think about that at the start of the season. If you could have got Kyle Pitts for a 2023 first, that's pretty juicy. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have been pumped to get that deal done. At least personally, I would have. So that's wild to think that here we are now. This guy that was contemplating to be 101, even in a super flex, people are like, "Oh, he's generational. He's generational." I don't know, man. He's a tight end in a landscape that just does not look super promising at this moment. It's tough. It's very, very tough, especially if you're that owner.
And if you're somebody that needs a tight end in the next, year or two, in dynasties, there's a couple of guys coming out here in the next little while that I think are going to be very good. Like there's Michael Myers out of Notre Dame, who will be the tight end 1 this year.
And that's
then
not even
there's
a homer
Brock.
pick. That's not even a homer pick. That's legit.
Yeah, he's a stud in a long line of studs coming out of that tight end room at Notre Dame. And then there's Brock Bowers, who I don't believe is even draft eligible until 2024. But he's somebody that many people consider to be the best tight end in college football right now, even better than Myers.
Yeah, he's somebody that I had my eyes on like pretty early, and it's like you still can't even touch him for another full year. And by that point, the hype's just going to be like Kyle Pitts level hype. You know what I mean? Like we're going to be having the same conversation again, but that's, he's getting Travis Kelce comps already, and he's in his second year of college football. Like it's insane. It's insane. But yeah, you're right. There's a couple other too. I'm trying to remember all the names off the top of my head here. I should have maybe drawn this up, but we went on a tangent here, so I wasn't fully prepared to talk college football tight ends. But there's been a few where it's like you're watching the games. That guy's good. That guy is really good, and that's part of the philosophy of dynasty football. I guess if you're a big college fan, there's a good chance you're probably pretty good at dynasty football because it takes a lot of effort to watch not only NFL football and college football and be diehard at both. So, but it's gonna be exciting. We'll get into a little bit more dynasty stuff. I could talk dynasty forever, but we'll get through a couple more of these and then we'll start getting into a little bit of our weekly recap of week 11 too. I think I have only Wan'Dale Robinson ACL out for the year as well too. But this one, Zach, I know you were real high on this guy. I just traded him away in dynasty, but Lions have designated Jameson Williams to return from the PUP a little bit later than we thought. We thought maybe it was going to be around the bye week 6. I think the Lions are doing the right thing though, making sure he is going to be fully healthy before they come back. And it's bizarre to say this, but the Detroit Lions are second in the NFC North. That just sounds absurd to say. I haven't said that in a long time. I should play hockey with a guy. He's a Lions fan too, and we were just hooping it up, 3-game win streak. Like we're living the dream here. So is that somebody that, like, I know for you personally, I know you drafted him late in a lot of leagues, just plopped him right on the IR spot. Is that somebody you're expecting maybe to actually do make a splash here, come down the stretch? We saw Monra be the fantasy football playoff MVP coming down the stretch. Is this something that, Jameson can step into with this already high-powered offense, or is it just going to muddle things up a little bit for guys that we've been relying on, like Amon-Ra, Jamal Williams, etc.?
I think if we were having this conversation a month ago, closer around the time where I had hoped and many people predicted he would come back, I would say there is that possibility of him really coming on strong and having a finish, probably not as hot as Amon-Ra, but it's tough to be as hot as the sun god. So, but an end of the season where he's a startable player in competitive lineups in the playoff. But right now he hasn't practiced up until this week. So I think there's going to be a readjustment period where even if he is playing or even starting for the Lions, I would need to be in a very tight spot to put him as a starter. I think unless it's just like they scheme him touches and he doesn't have to have like a full grasp of the playbook.
I think he's going to have, what's the names escape me here. He played for Philadelphia for many years. Then he was with the Rams for a bit. Just always blew his hamstring midseason. Always deep threat.
Macklin?
No. Oh my goodness. Feel bad I'm blanking here. He just signed with the Ravens.
Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson. I think he's going to be like very Deshaun Jackson-esque here, where he's that real deep threat, and he's just going to open the playbook up for everybody else. Like, he is fast. Like, he's real fast. And like you said, it's going to take him a bit to grasp the playbook. So I think they're going to get him involved. He's going to have that deep threat to try and open up the offense a little bit more and have to key him and just basically taking the top off the defense a little bit. And then it's just going to open up Monroe. So I would love for him to step in and be dominant, but I just don't see it this late in the season. But I do think it's going to be very beneficial for the auxiliary pieces of the offense. Like I would have said TJ Hawkinson if he was still there. Like it's just going to open up the middle of that field, especially, Monroe's very good at those crosser routes, and that's sort of a scheme that the Lions have been utilizing a lot recently, is those crosser routes and those midfield divide routes. It's been very beneficial, and now just taking somebody else off the top, it's going to open that up a little bit more. So time will tell. He's not going to probably play this week or next week, I don't think, but we'll see what happens. I guess that's a long-winded insiders and headliners. Going through this a little bit quicker. Promo code 306FFB15 still available, you guys, and we got Black Friday deals coming down the pipeline here too. So I know they just shared on Instagram deals anywhere between 80 to 20% off for some of these Black Friday deals. And don't forget, we have the promo code 306FFB15 as well too. So don't want to miss out on those ones. Like I said, 80 to 20% is wild in itself, but then tacking on an extra 15% ain't the worst thing either too. So find yourself down 22 Fresh in store or online and utilize the promo code 306FFB15 to not only look good, feel good, but also be very thankful that our partnership at 22 Fresh is going to help you at home as well too. So continuing on the merry way here, we got our studs of the week, and we'll start with Zach there. Who's your stud for week number 11?
So this has been a long time coming, as I've had this guy on a dynasty bench now for 4 years. But it was Tony Pollard, who came out as the RB1 on the week, accumulating 33.9 half-point PPR points. He did it on the ground and through the air, 15 rush attempts, 80 yards, 6 receptions on 6 targets, 109 receiving yards, and 2 TDs through the air. And truthfully, it could have been 2 TDs on the ground and 2 TDs through the air, because they gave the ball to Zeke twice on the 1-yard line and said, just don't fall backwards. And Zeke was able to punch it in or flop it in. So Tony Pollard.
Not only was he RB1 on the week, he was literally the fantasy football #1 player of the week.
Like
he had
himself a career week, and this is, I think, going to be one of the more interesting names, redraft and dynasty, coming up next year, or dynasty this off season, because he's a free agent at the end of this year, and they have Zeke in a big, long-term, expensive contract in Dallas. All things being equal, I think they would just take Pollard and let Zeke go, but there's a lot of dead money there. So it'll be interesting to see if Pollard goes back and if Dallas can afford to bring him back, or if he goes somewhere else and is a presumptive #1 running back.
It's interesting. I was listening to the Fantasy Footballers podcast was it last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, and they were having a very similar discussion about, Tony Pollard looks good. He's been explosive, but his problem has been conditioning, which I was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird to think about. And then they started talking about some of the stats and looked at it, and I was like, that is so true. It's actually kind of crazy. His career, he had never had more than 18 touches in a game from his collegiate career all the way through his professional career. And he had his most touches in his entire career in week 10 when he had 22 touches. That's the most touches he's ever had, period, which is like insane. So people think, just get rid of Zeke and just let Pollard go. Well, if Pollard can't maintain the snaps, like in those games, he looked gassed without Zeke too. And he even talked about it in a press conference that I am toast. Like I need a break. So I agree with you. Zeke looks not great. Like he doesn't look good. Pollard definitely looks like the better back. But I don't know if we'll ever see a time where Pollard is going to be the guy. Like he's going to be the one. We actually had a good talk about this on the way up to the football game this weekend too. We talked lots of fantasy, but I would be a little bit concerned if I was Pollard owner, in a sense. Not concerned, I guess, because he's playing very, very good. But I don't think you're ever going to get that Tony Pollard #1 bell cow. And I just don't think like Dallas played that game. They paid him like that game, and I think they're really regretting paying him like that. As we're talking about Zeke, so that's something I think to kind of watch as they're going out too, because I could see, like you said, getting rid of Zeke and then just picking up some old vet for cheap, like like a Mostert or somebody like that, that just can help carry part of the load, which would still obviously make Pollard RB1 and an explosive RB1 in the same breath. My stud of the week was also my start of the week last week, so I'm going to give myself a little tip of the cap. And that's Josh Palmer, and not to say it wasn't a sketchy one at that, because as soon as I heard Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were both going to dress, I started getting pretty concerned, because Zach and I both, that was part of a reason why we liked these two starts, was because of the availability and the touches. And all of a sudden, both of them were playing. So I was pretty concerned. I still had Palmer in 2 lineups. I still left him in. And thank goodness I did, because he had himself a week. And I think he ended up being fantasy number 4 and 5 on the week, if I remember off the top of my head. But he put up 26.6 points. He had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And this was kind of what we were expecting to see the week prior, when he unfortunately didn't have that great of a week. And then all of a sudden, guys come back, they miss a couple snaps or limited touches, and Palmer had himself a great week. Great matchup, great performance. So my start of the week is Josh Palmer. Zach, dud of the week. Who do you got?
Oh, this one stung me. I was in bye week hell in a couple of leagues, which led me to start Devin Duvernay, who over the past several weeks has been real boom or bust. He'll either get you 18 plus, or he'll just surpass 1 point. And this week he was a 1 point kind of guy. He had 1 target, 1 reception for 3 yards. So in half point settings, that is, I believe, some mental math here, 0.8 points, I believe.
Yeah, that's a tough day. Real tough day.
Yeah, and I thought that would be a bit of a, not a barn burner per se, but I thought they would take the Panthers to the woodshed, and they did not. Didn't get to watch that game, but box score and the highlights seemed like Lamar was struggling a little bit. So maybe it was that, or I'm not too sure, but or maybe it was just time for Duvernay to have one of his down weeks. But
It was
whatever the case may be, it was not pretty. Not the result that I was hoping for. I was much more expecting the DeMarcus Robinson stat line of 9 receptions, 128 yards, compared to the 1 reception for 3 yards.
Talking about guys with I wouldn't say high expectations, because I can't see you have high expectations for Duvernay, but like you have like at least a base level of what he's been performing this year. And I think a similar name was like Isaiah McKenzie, especially after the weather change. Like I was like, okay, McKenzie, this is gonna be a good option, especially because Cleveland came out swinging off the hop. McKenzie got 0 points. That's been very frustrating. I mean, he is arguably probably the 3rd or 4th option in that offense, but he's been putting up fantasy points kind of similar to Duvernay. And I don't know what's more disappointing, having him in your starting lineup getting 0, or having Saquon in your lineup and getting absolutely vultured by Matt Breida. That was a real kick in the nuts.
And Danny Dimes.
Oh, the first one's okay. You know what? I'll take that one. The QB keep on that sweep is like, okay, nice play, touchdown, okay. Then Breida vultures 2 right after. It's like, oh well, this sucks. This really sucks, especially because it was a high scoring game, and we talk about Lions our running defense has been getting better. I'll be honest, it actually is looking functional now, but it still isn't great. So like Saquon's gonna roast them, but yeah, it's I don't know if they just schemed them out or what the hell happened, but it was not good. Well, my my dud of the week, sorry, is also possibly losing his starting position, question mark. Some of the things that have been floating around, I guess, in the old Twitter sphere and some of the news reports. It's Zach Wilson. And not that Zach Wilson is a bona fide starter in your starting lineup week in, week out, or even like very, very very frequently at all. But I just put in there because it was so historically bad. And we talked about this a little bit in our sits, that the Pats defense is always good, and they always find a way to absolutely shred the Jets. It happens every time. And in the second half, they put up 7 total yards of offense in an entire half of football. The drives were like -2 yards, 11 yards, 0 yards, -1 yards, 5 yards, -11, and then 2. Like those are not the exact numbers, but it is pretty darn close to something along those lines. And like the memes that came after was like the average, like, was it 0.7 inches per play? Like it's like it's so absurd, but that's just how bad that offense was. And it's so bad that even the players in press conferences were making comments about how bad Zach Wilson has been playing, which as a starting quarterback, that's not something you want to hear, not something you want to see. And the players are turning on him, so he's got to turn on the Jets here, if no pun intended. Turn on the Jets if he wants to hold on to that starting position, because I know Mike White's going to be chomping at some ankles White season, but he that's historically bad. Like that is so bad. I don't even have his fantasy points in front of me here. And to be honest, he could have put up 20 points. I don't even care because that's so freaking bad. 7 total yards. And that impacts everybody. That's not even just him. That's the Jets offense in total. 7 total yards. That's bad. I mean, Zach, you were loving it, but if you have any Jets players in your starting lineup, I apologize.
That game was so difficult to watch because the Pats offense was looking as good as it has all year, from their goal line up until about the Jets 35. And then every time they would get to that high red zone, the wheels would just fall off and there'd be like a holding penalty, a sack, and a freaking like running back dive on third down because Matt Patricia's a bum. And then they would go and they'd miss the field goal. It was quite blistery, I guess, quite gusty out there at Gillette on Sunday. But whenever the Pats were on defense, I was like, blood pressure was boiling. I was scaring the dog a little bit, I'm sure. But then when the Jets were on offense, I was loving it. Just seeing the D line and the edge rushers tee off on Wilson. Seeing Wilson miss Braxton Berrios twice on quick screens by like 5 feet over his head with nobody around him at all. So it's not pretty. Saw today Elijah Moore I saw it on Twitter, but I'm sure it was a screenshot from Instagram, a picture of Elijah Moore that he posted himself of him throwing a football in warmups. Like, not so subtle, being like, put me in, coach. I too can throw for 7 yards.
Don't want to use me as a receiver, so you might as well use me as the Q.
Yeah, no kidding.
When I think about sorry, go ahead.
How bad of a entire offense performance is it when the leading passer and the leading rusher are the same person, Zach Wilson? Cumulatively, they combined for, little quick math here, 103 yards. He had 103 yards of total offense, rushing and passing, and he led in both categories.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good, Bob. When I think about like these dominant, like these defensive performances, especially from the Patriots, I think about, it's funny, it's the same two teams. I think about the Patriots versus the Jets. But back when Sam Darnold was playing for them, remember, he's like, their defense is so fast. It's like seeing ghosts out there. I just see ghosts, and it's like that was just a meme clip for quite a long time. But that's all I think when I see these dominant performances from the Pats, and obviously we talk about how good their defense has been. I imagine the Jets Q was seeing a few ghosts out there too, because like you said, you couldn't even complete the quick screens and the quick hitters. Like, it was just a total disaster.
I came across this tweet this morning as I was having breakfast. It's from Football Perspective. It says, in the last 9 NFL seasons, there have been just 6 games where an offense gained 105 yards or fewer. The Jets this week in New England, the Jets in 2021 in Buffalo, 2021 Chicago versus Cleveland, the Jets in 2019 versus New England. That'd be the Darno game, I'm sure.
Yep.
2018 Washington versus Philly, and the Jets in 2017. Basic math says 2/3 of those games in the last 9 years of teams having 105 yards or fewer have come from one New York Jets place.
The funny thing is we're ragging on the Jets, but they're actually having a good year. It's so bizarre. Like my buddy's a Jets fan, and well, he's a Jets / Vikings fan, whatever that means. But he's like, man, don't start the Super Bowl parade yet. But the Jets are having a good year, and then they go out and do this. It's like, and the Jets are back.
It's bonkers though. Like, I don't like a bit of a homer here, obviously, but like Bill Belichick has that team by the balls.
Yeah.
And until Bill dies, he'll have them by the balls.
Just the great West Buffalo.
the Jets have beat Buffalo, who are going to kill the Pats in 2 weeks. It's going to be awful.
Yeah.
The Jets have beat the Dolphins, who beat the Pats week 1, and who are likely going to beat the Pats at the end of the season. Like, the Jets have beat the 2 top teams in the division. I think they beat the Packers too, who beat the Pats. But Zach Wilson can't accumulate more than 110 yards against the Pats. Their entire offense can't get 110 yards against the Pats.
Yeah, no kidding. Funny, actually, speaking of Bill Belichick here, we might as well go and hear what he has to say.
"24 hours after the game, you got to move on."
Right now, we're preparing for Cincinnati.
Week 12, here we go. We had some big hits. The Swift sit. You got that last second touchdown that seems to be like it's happened a couple times here, but still a good sit call there, Zach. We had the sit of the Michael Carter. That was a good decision. Josh Palmer start. That was a smash play there, even though it was a little sketchy. But we'll get into some week 12 here. And no Armin, which means we had to handpick a few names. And actually, we found 3. One is Geno Smith. That's against Houston. Not against Houston, against the Raiders. Sorry, not against Houston. And the Raiders, they're just the Raiders. They are not a very good team this year, especially on defense. They've been actually very, very poor on defense. The only thing is the Raiders are really bad against the run, and Seattle loves to run the ball. So that Geno Smith start can be a little sketchy. He is widely available still, so if you want to pick him up and play him just because of the Raiders defense, go ahead. Just know that the touchdowns might be limited because of how much they like to run the ball. But the other 2 names that we want to mention, it's ironic that they're in the exact same matchup. It's Kenny Pickett versus Matt Ryan, and you could start both of them seemingly in this one. And it's funny, the same matchup, same percentage of ownership, 21% owned in Sleeper. So they're playing each other in this one. Kenny Pickett has been, I think, starting better than I think most, especially in the last little bit. He's starting to pick it up a little bit, especially with his connection with rookie wide receiver, which we'll get to in a little bit here. And Matt Ryan, since he has come back from the benching, has done an admirable job, I think, in the starts. And he is starting to, well, his connection with Paris Campbell is still a head scratcher. We talked about that one in the past. So he's getting the job done, and both guys are widely available. So if you're in a situation where you need to pick up a Q and play them this week, I think those are a couple names that could help you out. And a lot of fun because you'll be able to pick them up and you'll be able to sweat it out in the Monday night or all the way at the very end. So if you want a little bit of excitement on your start, add those ones on there too. So we'll continue on the merry way here, and we'll talk about our start sits. And I know we just absolutely shredded this team, Zach, but let's hear your start of the week.
Well, if we didn't dissuade you to just release all of your Jets and never touch them again, maybe this might persuade you to start one of them. I would consider starting Garrett Wilson if I was dealing with injuries and in the position that I had to start somebody. Garrett Wilson, you can do a lot worse than him. And this has one big contingency. It is contingent on Zach Wilson sitting his butt on the bench and Joe Flacco coming in to save the New York Jets season and keep Fireman Ed from having a massive heart attack. Weeks 1, 2, and 3, Garrett Wilson was wide receiver 16 with Flacco at the helm. If Flacco starts over Wilson, I would have a lot more confidence starting Garrett Wilson against the Bears if they do the easy thing and they keep Zach Wilson at the helm. I will do the easy thing and not start Garrett Wilson on my fantasy rosters.
It's so funny. We talked about this at the start of the year. Remember the comments that the receivers were talking about Flacco? And it was just like, they're trying to say, like Flacco puts the ball in the right spot and it's like, it's easy to get. The quotes were like, yeah, he throws a ball that's easy to catch. And it's like, so what are you saying? That Wilson throws a ball that's not able to be caught? And it's like, it's so funny, like the irony and how they comment to basically steward their own cue. But from what I've seen, it seems pretty accurate, I will say. But I do like that one, Zach, especially because you meant, like, for the reasons you mentioned, that connection was pretty juicy to start the year out. I'm going to another rookie wide receiver here, and mine is going to be George Pickens. He's a guy that's been interesting. I'll use that in a sense because he had a lot of hype to start the season and then was very underutilized and underperformed, and then started kind of catching on a little bit here as we progress. Still not getting a ton of targets and receptions, but the last couple of weeks, he had 15 points, then he had 0. So that really stunk if you had played him in that matchup. But against the Eagles, pretty unlikely he would have. But he had 15, then the Eagles matchup, then bye. Then against the Saints, he put up 13 points, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 32 yards. But he also got involved in the rushing game and a touchdown. And then the Bengals matchup, which is usually a difficult matchup, especially between the two divisional teams, 83 yards receiving on 6 targets, 4 receptions, and a touchdown. So getting things going a little bit, and against the Bengals defense. Now against the Colts, which is a significantly easier matchup, I think George Pickens is one of those wide receivers that you could see continue to progress and do very well down the stretch. We have the Colts, Falcons, Ravens, Panthers, Raiders, Ravens to finish the season out for fantasy. And I can definitely see him being able to catch a little bit of heat and start progressing as an Amon-Ra type talent down the stretch. So that's a name that I'm very interested in playing this week and very interested in playing the remainder of the season, just because, they lost Claypool. Now it's him and Deontay and Freiermuth, and they're going to have to move the ball to start putting up some points here. Najee Harris, even though he did have a pretty good week this past week, hasn't been the answer for them this season. So I would continue to look at the receiving options, and this is one that I think is a very viable option, especially in the Monday nighter. Could be, like I said, the same reason for the start of the Qs. Could be a lot of fun sweating this one out on the Monday night. So George Pickens will be my start. Now, that being said, transitioning into the sits, Zach, who we got on the docket today?
Well, I'm not sure what was cooler this Sunday, the helmets that the Cincinnati Bengals were wearing, or just the entire uniform, white on white with the white and black helmets. I thought those looked absolutely unreal, and that alone just about swayed me to put down the Bengals. As my new favorite team. They were unreal. Or the fact that Samji Pirine put up 28.2 fantasy points, and he finished the week as the running back 2. With all that good stuff said, I would consider sitting Samji Pirine. We know that Joe Mixon has a concussion and that he is in concussion protocol. What we don't know is whether or not he's going to play. This could be a situation where maybe he does play and then he's just a insurance policy. He's there, he's dressed, he's on the bench, but they don't play him. Or it could be a situation where Mixon is full go. We don't know. But what we do know is Samji Pirine, although he was the running back 2 on the week, he had 3 touchdowns through the air. If it wasn't for those 3 touchdowns through the air, his week would have been completely different. On the ground, he had 30 rushing yards on 11 attempts. Not terrible, but certainly not worthy of a start, and definitely not worthy of running back 2 on the week. He's coming against the Tennessee Titans, who are the number 2 rush defense. So even if Mixon is out, and Pirine is the #1 running back on that team, he is facing a very stout rush defense. So Sanji Pirine, I think, is more fool's gold than anything right now. But if he comes out this week, blows up there against the Titans, I will gladly, eat crow or whatever the phrase is, take those words back, whatever it may be. But right now, I don't think he is the play that some people may be thinking that he is, especially coming off the waiver wire.
Yeah, you're talking about fool's gold, and this one might be low hanging fruit, but I'm with you on that one. There's a habit especially for inexperienced fantasy players to look at the, I wouldn't say the box score, but you look at the fantasy football platform, you look at points, and then you find the guys that got a lot of points, and then you want to pick those guys up or put them in your lineup or whatever. One of those guys would be Tutu Atwell. And this one might be low-hanging fruit because of what he's accomplished this season and in his short career, but do not play him. I wouldn't even be picking him up. If you picked him up, don't play him. We talked about this last week, or maybe it was the week before, when we were talking about the injury to Cooper Kupp, and who are you going to think that's going to step up from the Rams? If anybody, would you like to jump on somebody that maybe is going to step up in a big way? And Tutu Atwell happened to be one of the names that we brought up, just because he's a wide receiver in a room that is a little bit banged up. If you look at Tutu Atwell, 12.7 points, hey, that's a good day. Somebody that can pick it up late down the stretch. I don't. He had one target, one reception, 62 yards, and a score. Now, it was a very nice throw and a very nice catch. I'll give him that. But this is a head-scratcher draft pick. I was confused by it at the time, and I'm confused by it now. Second-round pick, 25th in the – or 25th pick, and the 25th pick in the second round, and that was the Rams' first pick in the draft, and they had a pretty good wide receiver room, and they still went after and pursued Tutu Atwell, a very, very small wide receiver at 5'9", 165, and he has been nothing more than a punt return specialist in his career so far. To burn a second rounder as a punt returner is a bit of a head scratcher. Don't just look at the points he put up, 12.7. Look at the whole picture. He's got 2 receptions the entire season. So like I said, this might be low-hanging fruit, but it's more of I would be staying away from all Rams in a sense, because Cooper Kupp, well, he is out, but also Matthew Stafford's been battling injury. He left the game, and we just don't know what to expect. So I would be staying away altogether. Tutu Atwell, 100%. I would be not touching with a 10-foot pole, to steal a phrase of Armin Schellenberg's, as he is not here this week. So going into Wells' wagers here this week, we did record a little bit earlier than usual, so we didn't get those picks in yet because some of the odds weren't in yet, and we haven't finalized some picks. So those will be coming. They're going to be on the old Instagram as per usual, so making sure you take a look at those ones. So we'll have the Thursday night picks. I know there's a big Thursday night. It's the U.S. Thanksgiving coming up here, so we got 3 games throughout the Thursday, so making sure you're setting your lineups, you're paying attention to that, and we'll also have some additional extra fun picks, more than the usual Thursdays, and then we'll have some Sunday slate as well too. So as we're wrapping this one up here, Zach, do you have anything that maybe you want to mention or throw in before we conclude the episode?
Like you mentioned earlier, just a very exciting weekend for football in Saskatchewan coming up. The Huskies are off to Ontario to play the Laval Rouge et Or. The principal of my school, his boy is on that team, and get like little insider tidbits from the principal every once in a while, and he's very excited. Should be a very good game, and I'm looking forward to hopefully watching that game on TV, because for whatever reason, U Sports or whoever decided to broadcast it on cbc.ca this past weekend, and I was not able to keep up with it like I have most of the Husky games all season on SaskTel Max. So looking forward to watching them hopefully be on TV this weekend.
Yeah, I got to watch that one when I was writing my paper. So I had writing the paper, and then I had my phone on the side, and I was kind of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And unfortunately, this Saturday when the game's on, I got master's classes. So for sure during presentations what's going to be on my laptop. I'll tell you that for free. So So big good luck to the Huskies. You talked about your principal, but I know our old head coach, or myself and Zach used to coach there at St. Mary. His nephew is on the team as well too, so we definitely got a few connections on the Husky team. They fell just short last year, so hopefully they can bring it home this year. And then obviously from 2 alumni from U of S, we'll definitely be cheering for the Huskies in this Saturday Vanier Cup special too. So glad you mentioned that one, Zach. In fantasy football related, guys, we're coming short. The season comes fast and it ends even quicker. We only have 3 remaining weeks in the regular season, and then playoffs are here. So do what you got to do to get there. Lots of leagues, the trade deadline was last week. Some I know it's this week. Dynasty leagues, usually it's this week or the week following. Make those transactions you got to do, get over the hump. And we say it all the time. All you got to do is get in, and anything can happen in that 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, et cetera matchup. So good luck this week. That'll conclude everything for the nicest episode of the year, episode number 69. Good luck, everybody, in your week number 12. And on behalf of myself, Zach, and as well as Armin and Lucas, who are unable to be here today, and 22 Fresh, our major sponsor of the year, thank you very much for listening. Good luck, everybody. Take care. Let's talk soon.